As I've mentioned, we're going to focus on content analysis of children's advertising this semester. We'll examine race and gender representation within children's advertising, and we'll also examine what's being advertised to kids. The two articles selected for this week are the studies that will serve as the basis of our content analysis. We'll be using codes from these two studies as we code new content, so it's important to get familiar with these two studies. In this video, we'll go over the 1992 article by Dale Kunkel and Walter Gantz. 1992? I know, seems ancient, doesn't it? But yes, it's actually quite the gold standard for studying children's advertising. In fact, Kunkel uses codes from early studies by Barkus in the 1970s, when television advertising first emerged as an important public policy concern for children and youth. So let's get started. In the 1970s, scholars began to study whether children really understood the persuasive intent of advertising. In other words, do children understand advertising the same way as adults? As suspected, the answer is no. Researchers in the 1970s discovered that children below the ages of 7 to 8 years old did not understand that advertising is meant to sell a product, which means that it's using persuasion to get you to buy or do something. This raised the question about what is being advertised to kids and how. And that leads us to content analysis. In order to know what is being advertised, you have to watch the ads, count and identify the products and services, and look at the context in which the products are being advertised. Enter Barkus in the 1970s, Dale Kunkel and his colleagues in the 1990s, and us today. In the early 1970s, F. Earl Barkus documented the state of advertising during children's television programming. His work set a precedent for the examination of what they call non-program content, or kind of anything that's shown during the commercial break, and has been replicated and applied to children's television programming ever since. Overall, research in the 1970s indicates that 4 product categories, toys, cereals, candies, and fast food restaurants, take the lion's share of the types of products advertised to children, accounting for about 80% of all ads. Studies conducted in the 1980s and early 1990s indicate that the 4 product categories from the 1970s still dominate the field, with some slight variation over time. Well, what about today? Do these categories still dominate during children's television shows? That's what we're going to find out this semester. But before we get too far, it's important to get familiar with the previous research, and the Kunkel and Gantz article for this week does a really good job of describing the different codes used for the analysis, their sampling, and much, much more. So let's take a closer look at this study as inspiration for our own work.